Good morning and happy Friday. Welcome to Screen Junkies Universe. It's a great Friday today. We have a very special guest. It's Mr. Ken Knapsack in the house.
Everybody, good to be here. Good to be home. Good to be here. So close to JT, I could feel him.
You could just smell that beautiful peanut butter breath. Spencer Gilbert is here.
Yes.
Dan Merle. I'm Roth Cornett. He had a bagel with some peanut butter. It's delicious.
He did. I saw him make it.
Yeah, it's a delicious and nutritious breakfast for
You
you.
keep tabs on JTE way more than any of us do.
JT, I'm going to tell you the truth. JT is my spirit animal. He is my guide of wisdom. He provides me with Yogi Berra-like pearls of wisdom every single day. Today's was, he told Ken, you're right where you need to be. And that's how I think about life. In every chair, I'm right where I need to be. So that's JT's pearl of wisdom for today. More on that soon. But first, we have entertainment news for you. We have Zack Snyder has some thoughts about Batman. Are 3D movies dead? Fan questions. We're going to find how many people each of us has killed and more. But let's start with Zack Snyder. So he was talking on Vero, which is the social media app that no one else uses, that only Zack Snyder uses, talking about Batman v Superman. Still. And he was saying that Bruce Wayne uses sex as a drug. He was referencing a scene from BVS in which Bruce Wayne wakes up from a nightmare with a woman in his bed, after which he takes some painkillers. Here's what Snyder said. Here's an easy one. The Mapplethorpe above his bed. So there's a Robert Mapplethorpe painting above his picture above his bed. I chose to represent the erotic as a drug that Bruce uses sex to momentarily forget his pain. So lots of people have some questions about this. You know, isn't he busy? Batman's out all night Batmaning. Does he have time? Like, does he come home at 6 a.m. and do the booty call? Or like, at what point does that take place? Doesn't he have work to do? And here's my larger thematic question about the Batman. Bruce Wayne, in my understanding of the character, actually is putting on the whole Playboy thing. He'd rather be going home to Alfred and Batmaning than do anything else. And he's putting on, his cover is that he's this big Playboy, but Tony Stark really is a big Playboy.
No, that's a good point, is that Bruce Wayne is the act, the Playboy philanthropist.
Batman's the real guy.
The only thing that actually gets him off is breaking the limbs of, poor people who are trying to feed their families. That's the only thing that makes Batman hard.
Thieves? People that are stealing.
That's a slightly different interpretation.
Maybe they just took a job, a bouncer at a club for some mobsters, and then in comes a guy in a hat.
That is a crunchy take on Batman, Spencer.
Les Miserables version of Batman stealing bread over
Look,
here.
we have a thing called due process, and we don't like extrajudicial punishment for a reason, because we don't know why that person was standing in that alley with that club. Who knows? He could have just been taking his club for a practice swing, and in comes some fetish bat freak who's like, has some kind of vibrating codpiece on while he bashes your kneecap in, and then you're in the hospital and you can't make a living for your family.
Batmobile chasing lawyer.
Exactly.
Were you accosted by Batman? Do you think you're entitled to cash rewards?
Oh my God! The biggest class action lawsuit against Batman on behalf of all Gotham.
I mean, tell me, Ken, what's your hot take on the Batman? Do you think he's using sex to soothe his pain?
I think he is here in this situation. I think it's interesting that Snyder's up late on Vero, like just trying to like justify. I mean, that God bless him. The guy's had a weird run in the last couple of years. Let him have his explanations, but I could see it. I think you and Spencer are right. Bruce Wayne is not the real Bruce Wayne in the sense that Batman is more real him. But hey, even the Cape Crusader's got to get it on, and he's got a lot of pain in his head, so I can see that. and if you
coming out on the Mapplethorpe,
if you want to get it done, you find time to get it done. We all know that, all right? So I think I'm okay with the idea that Bruce Wayne about 3 o'clock in the afternoon is like, I need a cup of coffee. Wink, wink.
That's the saddest reference, way of framing lovemaking.
Gotta get it done.
let's
get this done. Let's just get this over
with. For love.
There's
There's no love being made there.
But also
right,
that take of
fair.
Bruce Wayne as the facade, that is a very Batman animated series version of the character. And this version that Zack Snyder made is much harder edged and much more, he does CrossFit. I could see him being Bruce Wayne as penance for the darkness of his soul. So this fits in line with the overall sketch of how Zack Snyder painted this character, which is a much more brutal and dark and kind of twisted version of Batman than pretty much any other, at least live action Batman that we've seen. So it makes sense. It's. I saw that he was also talking about the nightmare sequence, and it was tying into Darkseid and the anti-time equation and all of these crazy deep cut comic book things. So, but this is also it's kind of like what we talked about before with J.K. Rowling is like, I mean, you can say that this is what you meant, but it's all theoretical at this point. As far as I'm concerned, it's not canon.
Because what matters is what comes across on the screen and/or in the book, not sort of like retroactively saying, well, what I really meant was this. But he did really mean other things. So he said that the dead Robin in the DCEU is not actually Jason Todd. It may be Dick Grayson, and that Lex Luthor likely killed his father prior to the events of the film. I mean, all of this is sort of anecdotally interesting, I guess, but why do you think there's the inspiration to explain this film at this point?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, why? There's so many questions. Because, like, why on Vero? Why?
It's a safe echo chamber.
What's happening? I hope he's okay.
I hope he's okay. I think we're seeing a lot. This isn't one of those fandom nowadays talks, but we're seeing a lot where, you can sports radio talk these movies, which we do when we have fun doing, and it's our career. But I imagine at some point, as an artist, you're like, hey, I put it out into the world, and you're like, oh, I feel I'm getting attacked. Let me try to explain it. Maybe it's 3 a.m. You got a beer in your hand or something like that, and you're on your social media going, no. So it's this fine line. I do believe you should let it kind of be discovered and the audience connect with it. At some point, you're like, oh no, that what you're saying is wrong. I meant this. Let me say it. It's a weird line to walk. I understand, but maybe that's what's happening. I don't know.
I do worry that it opens up, particularly with these movies, and in light of Justice League and the way the movie turned out, and Joss Whedon and the Snyder Cut, and I worry that it does kind of work to cement this concept of there is one established version of these movies, and that is the only version that I will accept. And I worry that kind of universe building inside of that, if DC does things differently down the line, it furthers those divisions of just like, no, because that's not what Zack Snyder said. He said it was this, and you're messing with it again, and it just kind of fuels that. Like, that's the downside I could see to this. I think that there are fans of the movies, particularly the ones that really, really, really sided with his vision, that are going to like these little extra behind-the-scenes things. But I think it does open the possibility for further division down the line if DC says, like, okay, well, Zack Snyder says this, but we're going to go this way. People see, like, oh, once again, not, and then now we're back into the whirlpool, into the maelstrom. So I would encourage people to take this as, like, kind of like when an actor tells you a background story that he wrote for his character in his head. It's interesting, but it's not canon. It's just his version of things and where he was coming from. It's an insight into his process.
And it can even change, like Lynn, very random note is that Lynn Shay had a whole backstory for her character in the Insidious franchise that ended up being not true when they made a movie about the backstory for her character in the last film that they did. So yeah, anecdotally interesting, lots of different takes on the Batman.
But there's no way he's in a traditional lovemaking.
No, does not like the traditional.
I'm sorry, that just doesn't jive with what was on screen.
Spencer's take is that he likes to beat up poor people. My take is that the Batman that I know, like Bruce Wayne, is really just a facade, and like he doesn't mean it at all. Versus Tony Stark, who absolutely does. Like you're saying, Tony Stark is trying to ease his pain with
he's
sex.
Iron Man,
like,
that he can be.
He can be Tony Stark. Exactly, it's the reverse. You're saying that tracks with the Batman in the movie, and Ken says, you know what, get it done.
I'm
get
saying,
that
I'm saying
Need a cup of coffee.
Batman likes an afternoon delight every now and then. And that's all right.
You know what? Who doesn't?
Yeah, right.
You know what else is a delightful? Box office. In the world, but not so much here. That was an awesome segue. Come on, JT.
That was great.
Give that to me.
You can't call yourself
Can't
out.
call the segue.
I wasn't.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
all right.
Segue.
There's an anti-segue there.
Just give me all the
We
graphics.
stopped the show completely dead. It was like a
Quick segue out of the segue.
yeah.
Let's get out of that segue. Variety reports that the global box office has hit a record of $40.6
Oh my God, that astronaut's gonna fall in that
theater. Growth in China offsetting declines here in the U.S. and Canada. Domestic box office, however, fell 2% to $11.1 billion. We're going to say a bunch of numbers to you, and then we're going to discuss them. This is via a report by the Motion Picture Association of America. Higher ticket prices helps cushion the decline in U.S. attendance. So in other words, attendance is way down, but ticket prices are higher. So it balanced out a little bit, but we're still seeing a decline in overall box office here in the U.S. In fact, the lowest admissions meaning tickets purchased since 1995. So it also found that entertainment spending in the home rose 11% to $47.8 billion, driven primarily by, not surprisingly, the use of video streaming services. This climbed digital spending climbed 20% and international digital spending increased 41%, which again, none of this is surprising. We've talked about this a lot in terms of Disney going all in, basically purchasing Fox to bolster their streaming service. This is the future of entertainment. Other interesting notes is that frequent moviegoers like yourselves likely and ourselves are helping bolster the box office. 3D, however, is probably mostly dead. 3D films in the US and Canada have fallen 18% in 2017. Worst showing, this is again via Variety, worst showing for 3D movies in 8 years. The decline in 3D box office sales have coincided with an overall drop in domestic box office, and audiences are just not willing to spend the higher ticket price for 3D movies. They're not into it. They show a strong preference for 2D movies, and so studios are pulling back and getting a lot more conservative about greenlighting 3D movies. That has dropped 15% to 44 in 2017. Whoa, numbers! But what's interesting about those numbers, Dan?
Several things. First of all, it just kind of bolsters the overall trend, which is that success now more and more is driven by international numbers. The domestic, 10 years ago, the international was nice, but the domestic box office was the driver of success by and large, and that has completely in the last 10 years flipped on its head, so that now the international box office often is the determining factor. That's why we got Pacific Rim Uprising. It's because it did well in China. It's why, there's still talk of doing another Terminator movie, even though it looks like that fell apart. But even after Genesis absolutely tanked here in the United States, there was still some talk because it performed well overseas. So, number one, the United States is a market now. It's not the market. At the same time, China is completely kind of changing their system to push Chinese films more so than films from Hollywood. Of course, there's still some. Ready Player One's doing fantastically well in China. It's actually set up for, I think, another big weekend this weekend that's doing really well. So there are still Hollywood movies that break through there. But the Chinese box office is now not going to come in and bail out every U.S. movie now, because they're pushing Chinese films because they can now see what kind of power that they wield at the box office. So it's still very much in flux, but I mean, really the main thing is it looks like theaters are finally seeing like maybe we need to pare down a little bit. Maybe we need to pull back some of these bells and whistles and realize that like audiences are not going to pay $25 per person consistently to go see a movie. Maybe we have to pull this back and actually price tickets at an affordable rate. And then it's just the natural evolution too of just like the idea of a film's box office or success being solely driven by the theatrical box office. Again, with the move towards streaming, now ancillary is going to come much more into that. You're going to start, I think you're going to see studios start selling films for more after it runs to Netflix, to Hulu, to wherever, because that's where so much of the market is going, that you can now sell those movies more to those streaming services because so many of the eyeballs are going to the streaming services. So it's like, now it's not even going to be like, is a movie a success? I don't know. I'll tell you in 4 months.
So another thing that we talked about yesterday, Ken, you weren't here, was that Saudi Arabia is opening up now for the first time. AMC is opening their first theater there next month. Black Panther will be the first. There were some sort of like pop-up theaters where they showed Emoji Movie and other things. So that's a whole other market. How do you think that ultimately this is going to impact the creative, the sense that both studios are going to be targeting an international audience and largely targeting to Dan's point streaming and ancillary. So what are we going to? What kinds of films might we see?
That's a great question, and I'm going to Dan. You said something really insightful in there, where movies can no longer be bailed out by your either domestic or international. You have to consider it all. So you're absolutely right, Roth. You're going to have to look at how do you tell these stories, how do you cast these stories, who do you put in front and behind these stories to reach the entire world. The old adage of a foreign country just wants to watch John Wayne in a Western isn't the case anymore. So it's going to cause a lot of creatives to maybe learn how to tell stories in ways they're not accustomed to. So Fast and Furious 12 through 19 is all we're going to get.
Fast and the Furious was smart.
Well,
Way
but
ahead
I
of
was under the
time
impression
in
that there was the kind of John Wayne syndrome, like how Genesis did well, because it's like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and like the international box office is what's keeping these kind of last generation of movie stars in business.
I mean, the story around the fate of when you look at the storyline around the Fate of the Furious, is that it was a monster hit because it made over $1 billion worldwide. Nobody talks about the fact that it was a massive drop off here in the United States. I mean, from the seventh movie, kind of crawling over the $100 million mark. That's not even part of the narrative on the Fate of the Furious. The narrative is that it was an incredibly successful movie because it did well globally.
The Fast and the Furious as a franchise, even in the very first film, way ahead of its time, was an incredibly diverse franchise. It was an action franchise that was set first in Los Angeles. It was still diverse there, and then it got global, and it got smart about being a very global movie, and it has a global, diverse cast, and I think it has also. It's the Fast and the Furious, and if you're me and Sasha, we just love it. And it's amazing. It gets bigger and bigger. It's ridiculous. But I think that it's smart. But I'm saying it's smart. That franchise in particular is incredibly relatable across cultures.
It is, but that's
because it's wish fulfillment. It's fantasy.
It is,
family.
But it just goes to show
War.
how far we've gone. Because again, 10 years ago, the narrative would have been like the 8th Fast and Furious movie drops 40% from the movie before, and that's not even really part of the narrative at all, because it doesn't matter. With that movie and the scale that it did globally, it doesn't matter. And so that's one of the kind of key things, where particularly even with the blockbuster movies, how it does in the United States is only part of the story, unless it also, like with Transformers The Last Night, disappoints internationally and they don't have the big, they get a heftier percentage of the gross from the U.S. box office. That's when it becomes the story. But Ready Player One's going to be a global story.
With attendance going down and prices going up domestically, to me it looks like the movie theater business is turning more and more into the theater business, where we're all going to be the last generation that actually leaves our homes, and we're going to be a bunch of old gray-haired biddies. It'll be like a walker aisle and all handicap seating for movies, and everyone else will be at home streaming.
Yeah, and you heard me the other day. Like my whole thing was that it's going to be this. It's going to be either
tickets will be $100.
Like it's going to be very rarefied the way that theater is now. That Hamilton, damn you, I want to see you, but you're too expensive. Or it's going to be the Spirit Airlines version, where it's like, yeah, you get your ticket for this much, and now you got to buy your seat. You know what I mean?
The
And
left
they're
side
just,
of the movie
they're
for
like
this much.
exactly like they're just taking away, to Dan's point, more and more of the bells and whistles that they were using to draw us in.
You reminded me of a flight with Dan to New York for something that I just had to you pay for your shoe to be tied. You have $10 more.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to use the bathroom.
Yeah. Did you want to breathe that oxygen? This is what that
that's
costs.
an interesting point, Roth, that we could go to the movie and now it's just this tier of prices. Yeah, but hey, and as long as 3D's dead, I'm okay. Because the last time I saw 3D, I barfed up a meal I ate 3 weeks prior, so I'm okay.
Sometimes 3D's good. I think they overinvested in it, where it's something that if the movie's made for 3D and they really spend time on it, and that's part of the director's vision, then okay, it works 2 out of the 100 times I've seen it, because so many other times they're just like 3D as an afterthought to jack up the price.
Well, they're bad conversions a lot of the times. I mean, I will say that I think there are certain 3D films that I thought were beautifully shot. They may not even be the best films, but Prometheus, for example, was a beautiful use of 3D. Tron was a beautiful use of 3D, but a lot of the conversions just suck.
They do, but even the theater, I go to the Chinese theater here in LA, the used to be the Grauman's Chinese Theater, now it's the TCL
something,
Chinese Theater, but they have like laser IMAX 3D. I mean, like the best. Like I've never seen a 3D movie there, and I'm very sketchy about 3D that I didn't enjoy. Even they, even a year ago, would have been running 3D exclusively in that theater, and with Ready Player One, they were running like 2 3D shows, one at the beginning of the day and one at the end, and 2 2D shows. So even these premier 3D theaters are kind of pulling back and saying like, we're gonna mix and match. Even at our price point, it's just not sustainable.
Yeah. Well, we will keep tracking this and how the world of entertainment is evolving. But it is interesting to think about how we're going to be watching things in the future, who is watching them, and where the profit's coming from, because that is going to basically entirely dictate what we see creatively on screen. Blockers opens this weekend, and we were able to talk to John Cena and Leslie Mann and I can never say his last name. Barinholtz, who's a lovely gentleman, about the film. So let's take a look at a quick clip from that.
Thumbs down to dinner tonight.
Oh, what's the one food you don't eat on a date?
Those are both amazing guesses. It's actually not, but what is the one food you don't eat on a date?
Garlicky things?
Yeah, anything
Or-
oniony, garlic.
Livestock genitalia.
What'd you say?
Livestock genitalia.
Oh yeah, never eat like a chicken dick.
That's a third date food.
Yeah, so the question I have, you can see that full video on Screen Junkies main. Lockers opens this weekend. You saw it, Dan. I haven't seen it yet. I heard it's very funny.
It's I thought it was a very solid studio comedy, and I would wager, as great as those three are, the young cast for me stole the show even more than they did.
Oh. Livestock genitalia. What date do you eat it?
Oh, that's like honeymoon trip to Thailand
Okay.
food. That's like
Okay,
you
that's
gotta
like
be,
you
you gotta
already
lock that
you
up.
gotta lock it on. Okay.
That's if I have to do that, we need to reconsider this relationship.
Oh.
Yeah.
If you have to.
Yeah.
In what situation do you have to eat the livestock?
Well, if the person I'm with is like, hey, you need to eat this because I need to have a lively, spontaneous relationship, I'm like, I'm good. I'm going to go home and watch Netflix. All right? We're all right.
Dan.
Other than being on Fear Factor, Earth Day would seem to be the logical.
Oh.
Don't waste any part of the
Don't.
animal.
Yeah,
Exactly.
just eat the whole animal.
If you have to.
I've never had a prairie oyster.
Me
I don't
neither.
think I've ever had.
Why would you?
No.
It's disgusting
No.
sounding.
I ate some weird stuff at a night market in Beijing. None of them were genitals, but I ate snake and I ate fried bees.
Which
Bees?
did you prefer?
Bees.
Fried bee. If you fry a bee, it tastes like a potato chip.
Yeah.
It turns out.
So you like the bees?
Yeah.
Some jalapeno bee
Snake is like a
poppers?
wet chicken. It's not good.
Ooh. Yeah, I've eaten
Someone
most.
likes their food wet.
I'll try almost anything, but I have not had an animal ball
Peen.
just yet. Yeah,
no,
not just yet.
I hit the
We'll see.
Sizzler salad bar, and I know what I get each time.
There's probably some in there.
There's definitely. I mean, I'm sure there's been some.
We've all
some
had
kind of
hot
hot
dogs.
dog I've had. So we've all had some animal balls. Fan questions. James wants to know. You cats often say that. First of all, thank you for calling us cats. That makes us sound cool. You cats often say that a lot of superhero films fall off in the third act. That's true. So which superhero films do you think have a great third act?
That's a good question.
I thought Civil War, when it came down to you thought they were going to do them against the 12 super soldiers, and it was like, nope, mano y mano, y mano. I actually like Doctor Strange's third act a lot. Another kind of subversion of the when he trapped him in the time loop. It was
Yeah.
like a smart ending rather than just the big
Dormammu.
showdown. Yeah, Dormammu.
Come to bargain. Why was he able to breathe in space?
Well, he
The
wasn't in space.
sorcery.
Yeah.
He was in a
Different
different
dimension.
dimension.
Yeah.
So it's just the strange sorcery.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be the least strange thing that he was doing.
Dan's
was
like,
breathing.
Let's just say
I
yeah.
think the big floating cloud monster
Yeah.
was a little more challenging to me as far as challenging my concept of reality. But, yeah.
How about you?
Logan.
Yeah.
I thought very
That's
good
the
third
one.
act. again, I know a lot of people don't particularly feel a little weird about the third act. I liked it. I thought it was good. A lot of people don't like the kids. Like, oh, stupid kids. I'm like, I didn't mind it so much. I'm trying to think of any way. I agree that Doctor Strange, that was kind of what sold me on that movie, was the fact that it kind of didn't go. I thought it was going towards Skybeam land, and I was already pre-checking out. And then when they didn't do that, I'm like, oh, okay, this is clever and interesting and a different way to do it. So I did like that. And I still like the inventiveness of the third act of Ant-Man. Again, I'm not saying that the movie as a whole, like, I like Ant-Man maybe a little bit more than a lot of other people do. But again, like, I liked the thought that went behind the design of it, and not just making it two guys punching each other, but that they went into the microverse, and the train I thought was a really funny, well-staged set piece. So I would stand behind Ant-Man. My big thing with superhero movies is they just all get so big, and you lose all sense of character, plot. It just becomes sound and noise. And if you're able to do that, but also keep the flavor of the film, like, I think that's what's important. And I just feel like that's what's lost in so many movies, is it's just cartoon people punching each other, and you lose.
We've seen that ending a lot of times now. We were talking about this before with Black Panther, that kind of like glazed over during the big fight and snapped back in when they're on the cliff, because that's what matters.
Yeah, I would have loved like a My Dinner with Killmonger ending, where just he and T'Challa sat there and talked about it, everything, because that was really interesting. And again, I just think these superhero films, no fault of their own, are trapped into that classic 3-act structure, and you just kind of have to have the big fight at the end or the ticking clock, and I have no problem with that. It's all about the execution. I love Logan. Dark Knight, I was talking with JT and Billy off camera beforehand, they countered some of that, but I think there's a lot there. It's one of my favorite superhero films, Mystery Men. It ends with the big fight, but I think the characters learn something, and it also ends with the greatest line in that movie: we're number one, all else are number two or lower. But I just felt that the characters went through something, and you still had the characters in the final there. So it's not just a throwaway joke answer. I really do love Mystery Men. But yeah, I think that happens a lot. We just kind of glaze over. I love the Wonder Woman third act. I kind of glazed over, and like, you got to, the strengths of the first and second acts are what make you love those movies, I think.
I have to agree, and hopefully we can find a change in that and start to have more interesting third acts that do subvert those tropes. Ben wants to know, how many people has Roth killed? 3. Parker asks, if you guys can make your own Mount Rushmore of directors, who would you pick?
Wow.
Personal. Is it personal, or is it just a general movie debate
Well,
question?
I guess that's an interesting question.
A
Are we
movie
are we definitively, like, are we the ones that this is going to live forever? Are we making our own? Are we making it for the world? I'm going to decide we're making it for the world. So we better
Because
do
Mount
it right.
Rushmore seems to be like founding fathers
Yeah.
of
That's
directing.
true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Not just like the who's hot now.
Yeah. Let's do Charlie Chaplin in there.
Gotta, yeah.
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 Yeah. It's
Chapman.
either him or Buster Keaton, so let's
Hitchcock,
go
I
Chaplin.
think it'd be Hitchcock was on my list.
What about Kurosawa?
Ooh, gotta get that
would be a
Kurosawa
big
in
one.
there.
I was throwing Kubrick around.
Kubrick.
Spielberg.
We only got 4
We only have
slots.
4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kubrick, Spielberg, Kurosawa, and Charlie Chaplin.
Chaplin.
That's a,
All
that's
right.
a
It's
solid
a
one.
pretty solid.
Yeah.
We probably are missing
pretty
a lot of
solid.
things here, but
John
off the
McTiernan.
cuff, not too bad, not too shabby. We did all right.
Tony Scott.
Dro Williams wants to know, 10 years after the success of the first Iron Man, and it seems the world has gone superhero crazy, myself included. What direction, as far as pop culture, do you think the entertainment business would have gone if the superhero market never took off?
Question.
I love that question.
Yeah, if Iron Man had sucked and the Marvel just kind of abandoned
Ship.
The MCU.
the
yeah.
MCU, what would have taken its place? So what was going on? It was the mid-early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2008.
We had already seen sort of the decline. I'm going to say what I would have loved to see happen that will never happen is that I keep waiting for that moment that science fiction has its true emergence as like the dominant genre for a minute. It will never happen because it's just inherently a niche genre, seemingly. But I would have loved that if we just saw a whole slew of like beautiful, highly invested in science fiction films, because the only one that we've seen that had a massive budget on it didn't do well, which was Blade Runner 2049, but damn, it looked pretty.
Probably would have gotten more like historical epics You know, your Troys, your Pearl Harbors, the big giant event pictures, teen sex comedies.
Sure.
Still making American Pies.
I think there definitely would have been more IP that was not superheroes. I think that Hasbro cinematic universe that never quite took off maybe would have been more of a focus. I think that you would have seen more maybe TV show movies just kind of taking and
That's a good alternate. Dukes of Hazzard connective universe. Yeah.
right, because you know this is a lot of tent poles you're taking off the board, and God forbid a studio put a original IP as their summer tent pole. It's just not going to happen. But I also wonder how the market would have changed. For example, Fast and the Furious, largely to get out of Marvel's way, started shifting their releases to April because Marvel had May locked up, which kind of shifted the blockbuster season to April. Then Marvel started shifting their movies to all around. So I do wonder if the superhero genre hadn't taken off, if the summer release model might have stayed intact more than it is today, where now it's pretty much year round. Because I do think that Marvel helped to, and the superhero movies in general, helped to kind of expand the release window because there are so many superhero movies to put out year round. So I do think that maybe the summer movie season might be a little more intact if there hadn't been these universes building, etc.
Ken, what would you have liked to see?
I would like to have seen more swashbuckling pictures.
All right.
Maybe Three Musketeers reboot. Oliver Platt can still show up in it. It's all right. Just something like that. The historical epic is the win. That's the good choice. You know,
I don't want it.
No, I don't want it either. But an alternate universe. I mean, I'm a history buff. I guess in a way I would want it. But yeah, after Pearl Harbor, no. But yeah, in an alternate universe, maybe that.
More gladiators, you know.
It's always a good thing.
Yeah, I think that probably more 24s and like military stuff was really big around then. When I think that was when Homeland started, and it was just like everything was, you know, it was the heady days of the fun times overseas, and we were making a lot of movies and television about that.
Yeah.
Yes, we sure were. Alexander wants to know, final question for today, and thank you guys so much for sending in these questions. We will try and get to them, sprinkle it throughout the week. But if you had to survive on an island with one of your fellow SJs, who would it be and why? Spencer, you're going first.
Okay, so this is not to like help escape. This is just like you're there.
You're there. You got to live.
Oh. Well, I mean, Dan, you know, you're there at a seniority. I think that like we've spent many years working happily and successfully together. We could keep that going.
Yeah.
Or
Well, you get one. You got one.
I got one. Yeah, I'm just trying to think.
Cheat.
Okay, all right. I'll end with Dan. And no obligation to pick me back.
Each other.
You chose very poorly. I have no survival skills whatsoever. I hope you do.
Well, you know, I'll eat you.
There you go. That's a solid reason why. I have definitely more to choose from than some of the other people at ScreenJunkies. I'm trying to think who has the killer.
I know who it is.
Instinct.
I know who it is. It's Joe Starr, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I'll tell you why. It is 100% Joe Starr. He's a country boy. He goes out on his vacations with his wife, fishing.
He's probably
hunting.
killed a chicken at some point.
He's killed some things,
Yeah.
and he knows he's got more survival skills in his little country toe than any one of us city folks has in our entire bodies. We would be dead in an instant without that Joe Starr to wrangle in some fish.
That's a good answer.
He's never told me any of these stories.
Yeah,
about
he's
wild game.
But he's always
trapping.
presented them as like he's being dragged along on them.
Sure.
It doesn't matter. He knows how to do it more than I do.
It's like his father-in-law is like a falconer. Like
Yeah,
it's a thing.
exactly. It's a whole thing.
I would choose Hal Rudnick.
Okay.
Because Hal's got the energy to like climb up and get a coconut. You've seen his arms? His
Yeah.
guns. Those guns.
Yeah.
Forearms alone.
Yeah.
He has that wiry strength.
On cold winter nights, you could just nestle into his arm hair. It'd be great. It's a multifaceted approach,
Yeah.
and I'm choosing Hal Rudnick.
I'll be honest, if I could choose Joe Starr's wife, that's what I would really do, because Torlin's got the real killer skills. But like,
Can we choose anyone who used to work for us or has appeared on our shows?
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Okay, then I would go with either Roka or Jason Inman, because they've both been in the military, and I know that they have basic survival skills, which I lack. So I'm going to pick one of the guys that actually
I
knows
would
what
do
they're
that.
doing.
Yeah.
that's
do that.
smart.
So, yeah.
All
there you
right.
go.
Mundy would show up on the island with his boat shoes, and you both see that in 2 days.
The point is,
You'd
in
have
the
fun.
zombie apocalypse, the 4 people that you see here will be dying first. Okay, good. Thank you. Good show.
Well, zombie apocalypse is different. I feel like I'm well equipped to survive
The zombie
Yeah.
the
apocalypse.
zombie Zombie
we've all
apocalypse,
thought this
yes,
over.
yeah.
This
quite a
one,
bit.
You've been
this is,
training since Shaun of the Dead.
Exactly.
Man, so-
All right,
I have
so-
I literally have a cricket bat at home that I can use.
All right. Well, zombie apocalypse. Look to Dan. Island. We're saying Joe or Jason Inman or maybe that Hal. You picked Dan. Y'all are dead. All right. We will see you Monday. Have a good weekend. There's so many good things for you to watch. We're gonna have stuff on news on the main channel. Go watch that Blockers. Honest Trailers coming Tuesday. What is it? Tease.
No.
Okay.
That's my tease.
Have a great weekend.